Cradle, Dogs of Fount, Chapter 6, December 12th, 2317. I never thought I would write in a diary or journal. I was never that type of girl. I did this because I really can't speak to anyone about how I feel or what I'm thinking. They'd keep me in an institution if only for evaluation, that's for sure. Ha ha ha. Freddie has grown on me. That would be an understatement. I've become infatuated or obsessed, to be blunt. It was 3 years ago. He was 17, and he ended up in our building because the courts decided not to throw him in jail. He beat up one of his teachers for making fun of him. Honestly, I would have too. Made fun of him. He talked like a mouse, and his hair was longer than mine. He always smelled like watermelon and banana. Don't ask me why he did. So they sent him to my office just to give me experience with a tough case. After a personality assessment, I concluded it'd be in his best interest to become a resident and receive treatment for a psychosis I couldn't weed out as far as the diagnosis was concerned. The first year, he isolated himself. Nobody liked him, not the other patients, not the staff, no one. He'd just sit on his bed and look out the window sometimes and have a blank face. A few months later, into the second year, a nice fellow named Eugene gave Freddie a mechanical puzzle box. It wasn't for kids, as it was extremely complex. For weeks, Freddie didn't even look at it and just sat staring into space. I took a long weekend with Rick, my fiance, and when I came back, I would never see Freddie without the puzzle. He would not stop trying to get it open. He got frustrated until the veins bulged from his forehead, but he never got violent with it. It had been 2 months until he figured out how to open it. I don't know why, but he came to my office to show me he did it. Seizing my chance, I asked him would he like to have sessions with me on Wednesdays and Fridays in the evening. He knew the move was opportunistic, yet he agreed. The first few sessions we had, it was obvious he had so many insecurities that any subject I brought up had a past, or better yet, sore spot. So I brought up a dog I had one evening while talking to Freddie. He responded well to that at first. He had a small dog breed and told me at first he wanted a big dog, but the dog grew on him and he ended up loving it. He told me one day he let it out in the backyard to use the bathroom. Just as always, Freddie opened the back door 5 minutes later, but the dog was gone, hole in the fence. He never came back, but that wasn't the point. That same year, his father left him, his brother, and his mother. He always wanted to know his father more, but it was quite obvious the father had issues. Then, a few months later, his older brother moved out without telling them where to. Lastly, his mother was so out of sorts she became silent and distant. Freddie explained that everyone ran away from him, and it all started with that dog. Needless to say, this is where his breakthrough came. Throughout the rest of the year, I encouraged him to step outside of himself and try to build his confidence by slowly facing his insecurities. He changed. He changed a lot. He started befriending all the new residents. He led peer groups. He attended homeschooling through our education program and eventually got his diploma for high school. The dose of his medication was so low at the end that he was practically naturally healed. So I saw in him a man that was powerful and special. I started to develop feelings for him. I'm only 7 years older than him, but the papers came to my desk. It was my call to sign his release papers or keep him until further notice. The papers came 3 weeks ago. You see, he has a history of violence, and in that case, the judgment of his sanity falls solely on me. I want to be with him. I want to leave Rick and elope with Freddie. In order to put the pieces together, I have to deny his release. This is so damn crazy. I am so crazy, and I'm a therapist. Honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do, and that scares me. Pete stared at the page of the mostly empty journal for a moment after reading this entry. The lights were dim in the coffee shop, and the old-time jazz was romantic. It was crowded with upper middle class 30-somethings, and yet it was very serene and subdued. You had the writers scribbling away in their leather-bound journals, the science geeks with licensed calculators and spiral notebooks, musicians with their portable radios and huge headphones and big beards. However, Pete was going in circles in his head. This kid Freddie needed a fair shot in life, and this crazy chick had his fate in her hands. This is not something he needed to think about right now. His very own life was about to change. He had fulfilled his savings goal. He had enough money to buy a nice single-family house in Hota. Hota was a beach town on Lake Nimli, and there was never any houses there on the market for too long. The house he had claimed to was on a wooded street with big lawns, nice cars in the driveways, and quietness due to being removed from the urban areas. The decision should have been easy. He was a shoo-in for a new job at Dodd's headquarters in Sisal. They were the only producers of vinyl in Fount. Vinyl had many uses, so Dodd was one of the bigger influencers in politics in the city. The problem wasn't his future. Pete's problem was his past. He'd been free of Jill for years now. Jill was a synthetic drug first produced in the early history of Fount. It was like no other drug before the dissolve. Jill was like steroids for the glands that produce serotonin. Pete slept a lot while on Jill, but if you could find that sweet spot where you had enough energy to stay awake, the world became paradise. With advances in psychology and medicine, anyone could break the addiction and get on with their lives. The problem with that was people would take vacations from Jill and come back and so on. The personal cost for treatment was very expensive. The last time Pete recovered, his out-of-pocket expenses were 6,500 credits. He borrowed heavily from family and friends and lost a bit of them too in the process. Everyone had steel coffee mugs or recycled plastic mugs for coffee in Fount. The push for sustainability had been natural for centuries now. Pete stood up and straightened out his white t-shirt. He threw his blue mug in his rucksack, picked up the journal. On the way out the door, the dark foyer, he threw the journal in the trash. No one needs to read that, he thought. The sun was behind the clouds for the moment, yet the heat was enough to give it the effect of walking into a dry sauna. He left his car at his apartment. The coffee shop was only a 10-minute walk, and he was so lost in thought that he made it there without remembering exactly how he made it through all the crosswalks and turns. It was only when he got his blue pajamas right before sitting on his bed as he did every night that he understood his conflict with Jill was deeper. It felt as if he was thinking about being high on Jill without being consciously aware of it. His life was better for stopping it, but it was also a lonely and empty one. When he was high on Jill, he could feel happy. Yes, he was still empty, but he was happy most of the time. Really happy. He got off the bed and looked at the street lit in the orange lights from the street lamps. He wasn't sleepy at all. Just make sure you plug in the order numbers on the invoice. The dummy in accounts payable would forget his own butt if it wasn't attached. Gary laughed as he always did with his own jokes. Pete nodded and brought out the invoice book in its classic puke green cardboard cover. He ran his fingers through his short brown hair because he'd just gotten a haircut yesterday, and it felt pleasing because of the conditioner the barber put in. His mother said his hair was like the old-time Creoles. She said if he went natural, his straight hair would get nappy. Karen was standing in the opening of his cubicle with her head cocked. She was blonde now. She was always changing her hair color. He thought she had a crush on him. He really didn't like her because she was relatively odd in the way she talked. She was prone to long conversations about small issues, and Pete had an issue about wasting his time. He didn't like frittering away minutes where he could be productive or high. "You need something, Karen?" he asked. She laughed and shook her head. "You don't see your radio light blinking?" If Pete's skin wasn't so brown, he'd be visibly embarrassed. It occurred to him that Karen might not like him at all, but then again, with some women, you never knew, he thought. He pressed the radio button and spoke close to the mic hole. "Yeah, this is Peter." "Letter in mailroom B, marked urgent," the operator said and clicked off. "Thank you." "Mr. Calabrese, this letter is to inform you of your delinquency of down payment on property located at 108 Sycamore Boulevard, Hota, Fount. zip code 87223. You have 2 days upon receipt of this letter to deposit your down payment at Regal Bank, 40233 Winslow Avenue, Sisal, Fount, 25771. Care of account number 000-914-2567, or you will lose sole claim of listed property. Thank you. Bill Yukon, Jobs, Berry and Associates. At his desk, Pete looked at his hands trembling for a moment. He inhaled deeply through his nose and thought of visiting his mother. "You're not a kid anymore, idiot. What can your mom do for you?" he thought. 2 damn days, he mumbled. "This is bull, man. This is not fair." His hands were pins and needles, and he could feel sweat on his forehead. He could feel tears welling up, but he would never let them fall. He had too much pride. However, that sensation unnerved him. He pulled out his bottom desk drawer, ominously lacquered in black. The white vial was under a file folder. He grabbed it and shook it. Sounded like 2. That would be enough. Pete had never felt such a freezing sensation. It felt as if his mind were ripping in 2. He set the vial on top of the letter from the lawyer and put his face in his hands. This way, the world would stop bothering him. He still didn't know what to do.